And you're listening to iTalk, everyone. 106.7 FM, the voice of the mountain. I'm your host, Janine Ford. So glad you are with us today. We're going to continue our conversation on the Board of Supervisors in Navajo County, the big meeting this week. And it's been much the same in Apache County, these horrible fights against the green nude lie, or whatever you want to call it, and the big giant 8,500 wind turbines looming on us, and solar giant fields. And I have Steve Carvajal. He was at Tuesday's meeting, and he was the first to speak after the little Real AZ fiasco and brag report that was all just bizarre. And I hear like somebody's issued a records report to see if half that stuff was true that Chris Pastores was saying, right?
That's correct, Janine. And hello, everybody. Glad you're having a wonderful day here up on the mountain. It's another beautiful day. I got to tell you, that was probably the most boring, and if you need to go watch the video, because I rarely get the chance to really jump up and attack people the way I did verbally. Yeah, even though I wanted to do it physically too, because there's so much BS that they put out there, and it's just disgusting. This Chris Pastors guy is the biggest con man we've seen in a long time, and we're paying this moron to do this stuff. This is disgusting. I call the Board of Supervisors the Board of Supervisors, because you go into a stupor as they really have very little concept of what really should be going on in our county. They've got their own little enclave. They listen to themselves. They've got an echo chamber up there. They do not care about what the citizens of this county think. They do whatever they think they want, and what Chris Pastors says it would be a great idea, and what that idiot, Stretch Layton thinks is a wonderful thing to do. I mean, I think the problem with Brian Layton is he's so tall that he's up there in the rare air. Just not enough oxygen to keep his brain functioning.
Not enough oxygen.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a disgusting thing.
Well, they all kind of look at everybody else like, oh, you're just stupid. You don't get it. All the sales tax. And I'm kind of like, if they were smarter and they did all their homework about what happened to Oklahoma, Texas, and all these other places with bonds failing, the sales tax doesn't even come through. Oklahoma and Texas both have spent more money trying to sue for their sales tax.
For the property tax.
For the property tax, yes. Right. I'm sorry, property tax, than they ever got in property tax.
Exactly.
It was a total monster.
It cost them a loss.
Yes.
So they lost on every, here's the thing about especially places like Guyman, Oklahoma, which is in Texas County, which is just across the border from Texas. But at the end of the day, Guyman, Oklahoma has spent more money, just like Central Texas, trying to chase these windmill people down.
The foreign companies.
Yes, and that's why shift and duck and dive.
And you would think the contracts that the and the permitting and everything else that the county's doing, that they would have protections, because the bonds just fail. They've seen, and they've been told thousands of times, the bonds fail. They're all foreign companies. They bankrupt. And these foreign companies, like the one out of Lava Run, has admitted, we will only be here for 2 years. We're only going to be managing it for 2 years. After that, no one handles it. There's nobody on the hook to handle them, to remediate them. Nobody's on the hook.
So this is a very interesting point you just brought up, and completely accurate, because idiots like Chris Pastors, he goes out here and he gathers all this money that the county wastes on whining and dining all these NGOs, is what they truly are, to come in here and build this stuff. And we're going to get to why they do that in a little bit, but the fact is they spend an inordinate amount of money. We got a $600,000 grant from APS, which is really just a bribe for all the county to go after the wind and solar programs. Because APS, remember when we talked about their 2023 systems integration report, they talked about they want to be net zero by 2050 and carbon neutral by 2038, which is just an absolute stupid position. It puts us at such a deficit for electricity production, which we need more of, not less of. And these people, they're lying through their teeth. They're being paid to get the money. The Biden administration paid them, gave money to NGOs to do this. So take Lava Run, for example, or the other one over there, Triple Oak. These morons get up there, and I guess they're not the morons. I guess these other people would be the morons for believing them. They literally state they have to have 2 public meetings by statute to be able to produce some of these projects. A public meeting. Now, in that public meeting, they don't have to allow the public to speak. They don't have to do anything. They can cherry pick the questions. They can make it sound whatever they want.
We saw them do that, and there was a fishbowl. I just laughed because everyone they picked, tell us why you're so wonderful, which we didn't get to see the piece of paper. Next one, tell us why this is such a glorious project.
Well, tell us the wonders again of solar and wind.
Yeah, it was like Romper Room, yeah.
Yeah, you really want to just go up and hit them with a stick. You truly do. But at the end of the day, I'm sorry, folks, I have to express myself physically at times, and I've done this my entire life. It is really a tough habit to shake. But at the end of the day, so they do this. They get up there and they literally tell everybody, we're the developer. We're going to develop this project. We're going to bring Mortensen in to build this project. And then we're going to sell it to a multi-billion-dollar company. Okay, so let's stop and think for just 1 minute here. So each one of these projects claims that they're going to make at least between 600 and 900 megawatts of power, almost half to 9/10 of a gigawatt of power at full blown when they're all operating. Now, they're not going to talk about the times when they won't produce a iota of power, but let's just talk about that they're going to produce this massive amounts of power. So let's just take the average. So we have right now 17 different projects on the plate for Navajo and Apache County.
Which would be like 8,500 windmills.
And about, last time I counted, about 280,000 acres of solar fields.
No more ranching, no more cattle, folks.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah. No more tourism.
Yeah, just kind of keep all that stuff away from us. So at the end of the day, so let's just take this and think of this in realistic terms. So the transmission lines up at the Cholla plant is what they're hoping to tie into in the northern part of the county. There's not the native land, because the reservation lands, they're not letting these things anywhere near. They don't want them 10 miles
They're
from
smart, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they're smart or not, but they're smart enough to keep so. And again, this is another complaint I have about why we have 3 natives sitting on our board of supervisors who can outvote the only 2 that aren't on the natives' land, and they don't want them having on their land, but they'll put them on ours.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, that's a big problem for me right now. But let's just go back to the real facts here. We have 17 projects. So let's just say the very minimum that the smallest ones are going to produce half a gigawatt or 500 megawatts of power. All right. So if you take that amount at 17, that's 8.5 gigawatts of power that they're talking about producing when everything's working properly. All right. Now, we have transmission lines that they're hoping to tie into at Cholla plant, which can only hold 1 gigawatt of power. The Cholla plant, and we have the lines coming down from the Four Corners plant to it. The Four Corners plant produced 80 megawatts of power. The Cholla plant produced at full blast, when all 3 units are operating, would produce about 787 megawatts of power. So those 2 combined would produce less than 900 megawatts of power, which is why we have 1 gigawatt transmission lines on them. Now, folks, I don't know if you understand this or not, because this is pretty simple. Just think of it like a tube or a pipe. And if the pipe's 1 inch wide, you can't stuff 7.5 inches or 8.5 inches of water or dirt or anything else into that freaking pipe. So that's exactly what you're talking about. You have 1 megawatt of lines that are going to run down to Phoenix. And
the sickest thing about this, and you say that too, is all of this, they'll build all these because they want the 98 billion. Maybe, let's say they get lucky and it runs for 2 years. We will have a mini nuclear land here, which only takes 5 acres, by the way, folks, and adds a ton of jobs. A mini nuclear, all of those will shut down because there's no transmission lines for them left, and they'll stand for a time and eternity with 40 tons of rusting crap underneath each One rebar and steel.
Forever.
And also, our county, their idea of remediation is just to take the top away. Well, the top gets taken off and buried in the same land, and the 40 tons of rusting rebar, steel, and concrete and lime that's leaching into our Coconino aquifer, those stay there for time and all eternity. I mean, it's horrifying.
It is. So let's talk about this for a second. First of all, I'd like to step back to our thing. So we have 17 projects underway here. And the point we were making about the developer was they're already telling these idiots at the county, and they're telling this stupid idiot, Chris Pastors, who has got to be one of the dumbest people walking the planet today. He makes Kamala Harris sound smart. And you know how hard that is? So anyway, long story short. So, yeah, I'm on an attack today, folks. But the fact is that I had to sit through 45 minutes of Pastors laying on the BS the other
And he
day.
also, by the way, in this speech, he called our Grand Canyon a big dirty hole, did he not?
He did. You wonder why I call this guy a
big
moron.
dirty hole.
He said,
referred to the Grand Canyon.
Exactly. He called the Grand Canyon, one of the 7 wonders of the world, a big dirty hole. This gives you an idea what this guy
He's not
is.
from Arizona, by the way,
Yeah,
folks. We hired him from
I
far
think
away,
he
yeah.
was made a lab somewhere in Central California. But the fact is that we go back to this. So there's the developers are telling us that we're going to build it, and the contractor is going to construct it, and then we're going to sell it to a multi-billion-dollar company. Well, folks, what happens if no multi-billion-dollar company comes in?
Well, they're not
and
going to with a mini nuclear in here and no
Absolutely
transmission lines.
not.
See, on their contracts, they should have a guaranteed line. You got lines on transmission. APS is signed on this contract that they're going to handle these windmills. They're going to buy them. Okay, they need to be on those contracts. That's at the bare minimum. Never mind that the Board of Supervisors and Jason Whiting and Daryl Seymour and all these guys totally ignored us, begging for any kind of setback. They moved it closer to our homes.
They did.
Now, when a windmill falls toward your house, it'll just miss your doorstep.
They did. They gave us the double-fisted middle finger to every resident in the county.
Yeah.
Nobody should ever
They haven't
vote.
protected us.
Yeah. Nobody should ever vote for these morons again.
Anybody on the board right now? Yeah, we need
Get
all
rid
new.
of every
We need
single
all
one
new.
of them.
And I have to ask you a question about this while we're looking at this right now too. Is there a way that this is an emergency situation? Is there a way that they can be notified and then that helps us with a big old lawsuit?
Absolutely. So this is what we've been working on. We talked about it before. The only way that the county should ever approve anything on this, they put themselves in a pickle right now that is a serious condition. There have been, because remember, we're talking about multi-billion-dollar companies that are coming in here, and they're using our tax dollars to basically construct these projects. And these are the developers that are going to pay the contractors. There is no single company out of the 17 that has brought a operating company to the table.
Yeah, and they're all foreign companies, by the
That's
way.
right.
They go bankrupt after it's done.
Not a single one's in the U.S. So they come in here, and the county is sitting over here. They're rubbing their hands like Simon McGree over there, thinking that's an old. Some of you guys might
right.
understand, but they are sitting there, greedily looking at all this money they're going to get from the taxes on these things. Well, guys, I got to tell you something. You just exposed how stupid you are, because here's the problem: there is not going to be any taxes if there's no operating company. There's not going to be. The developer doesn't pay a dime in property tax until the project is complete.
Right. And they're paying reduced property taxes, which sucks
80%.
less than you pay, okay? And then the other bad thing is, say they get some property taxes up front. They were talking about that. Say they get 2 years worth of property taxes up front. These things stand forever.
Forever.
For 50 years. So 2 years, and then there's nothing, and they're bankrupt, and they're gone. What the hell?
Yes, that's exactly right. The Board of Supervisors is basically playing Russian roulette with the county's livelihood with 5 bullets in the gun. right now.
Right.
You know?
And I just want to know how our residents, how there could be a big, gigantic of billions and billions and billions of dollars, big pot of money for when, because Texas, you can show that Texas and Oklahoma, their property values plummeting by 50 to 80% within 5 miles. And we have a 700-foot setback to our doorstep. That's all we got. They gave us worse. So the point is, I want to know if there's a way to be able to set them up to sue them, the county or them personally, because they ignored our emergency situation.
So, folks, here's what we need you to do, and this is super important. You need to write to the county supervisors. Each one's got an email address, or you can write to the county in one letter and put all supervisors on it. And Leah Thomas, who is the Board of Supervisors secretary, will actually copy that letter and give it to each individual supervisor. You can hand deliver it if you don't want to pay the $1.85 or whatever it is, which I wouldn't, but then again, we'd have to pay $6 gas to go get it. But at the end of the day, folks, you got to write this letter out that explains to them, we must have the operating company brought in to the permitting process.
Yes.
Here's the key thing. The reason that Jason Whiting keeps turning around saying we can't say no because they will sue us and they will win and he's exactly right. For once in his life, Jason is right, because they have been so neglectful in setting up the permitting process. Now is the time they have to change this. We have very few of these people who have put in for this now. In fact, I don't know if even one has put in for the permit yet. So we need the county to change the planning and zoning paperwork requirements that will now require an operating company to operate for a minimum of 10 years, give us a bond up front that'll guarantee they will be here for 10 years, or we can pull on the bond, that will guarantee that we have an operations that'll actually occur here. Because the people who are in here that Chris Pastors has brought in to our county as economic development, they don't have an operating company, folks.
They've admitted we're out in 2 years.
That's
the time they build them, and they're out.
Yes.
So we could be just left with these things. And we're going to take a short break, but we're going to continue this conversation, because the other thing that bothers me is when he says, oh, we have to do this because we'll be sued. But they didn't have to move. It was very telling that they changed all those ordinances. We were begging for more protections, just a 1 mile. And he said, yeah, we're going to probably get a 1 mile setback. Okay, we need a 4 mile setback. But he said, we'll get a 1 mile. And they lied, and they didn't do any of it, and they moved it in on us.
They did indeed.
To 700 feet. Yeah. Okay, so I don't buy any of their arguments, because
there are
you can't
no
trust
arguments
them.
for what they're doing.
All right,
lies.
Yeah. So we're going to take a short break, everybody. Keep it right here. iTalk 106.7 FM, the voice of the mountain.